Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the third segment of In the Booth. I am Jim Bunner, America's greatest journalist, and of course, your host. All right, so people are protesting at Brett Kavanaugh's house because, by golly, it's my body, it's my choice. But if we're going to have this fabulous vaccine mandate coming down from the federal government, why, the federal government has the right to do that. You know, and all of this is being challenged in court. This is going absolutely nuts. Lawyers are going to be loving all of this. All right, well, somebody who I'm pretty sure probably has some very strong opinions about the Texas abortion law is none other than Guestcathi Herrod, who is the president of the Center for Arizona Policy. She's joining me right now to talk a little bit about what kind of laws we might be able to see here in Arizona after all of this in Texas is going on. Guestcathi Herrod, thanks a lot for coming on In the Booth.
Well, thanks so much. Glad to be on with you today.
All right, so just give your organization a little bit of an introduction. What is the Center for Arizona Policy?
Well, we advocate for good bills, to pass good bills, and to see bad bills defeated in the state of Arizona. We speak out on issues, the sanctity of human life, protecting the unborn, protecting humans from the very beginning of life to its natural end. Want to see marriages and families strengthened, parents' rights, educational freedom, religious freedom. That's the core of our focus. As you could summarize it with freedom, freedom for the unborn, freedom for parents to raise their children as they see fit, to choose the schools that they see fit, and certainly the freedom for everyone to believe and for the First Amendment to mean what it's supposed to mean.
All right, so do you believe then that women should have the freedom to do whatever they want with their own bodies, and if they have a body growing inside of them, they have the right to have an abortion?
Well, the key part of what you just said is they have a body growing inside of them. We believe that human life begins at the moment of conception, and that human life is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we are strong advocates for the unborn, but also their mothers. We're as concerned as the woman walking into an abortion clinic as we are about her unborn child, because women often are sold a bill of goods, that abortion will solve problems. It doesn't. That abortion doesn't harm women. It does harm women. And so we see two victims. We see two that we're advocating for, both mother's health and safety and the life of the unborn child.
All right, so this Texas law that says that women in Texas cannot have abortions after 6 weeks. Are you guys at the Center for Arizona Policy excited about what this could mean for other legal precedents in other states, such as Arizona?
Yes, we're very grateful that in the state of Texas, since September 1st, unborn children are not being aborted once there's a detectable heartbeat. Once the doctor can, it's discernible, you can hear it, that there's the baby's heartbeat. Abortions are not being allowed in the state of Texas. It's very important to note that the Texas law is different than any other state, any other bill that's been proposed in Arizona or elsewhere on what's called heartbeat legislation. And it's because there's a different enforcement mechanism. It's a private citizen enforcement mechanism. And so in Arizona, we have to analyze it. We have to see what happens in the courts between now and January when the Arizona legislature goes into session. And we need to see how this same type of enforcement mechanism could operate in our state.
All right. What are some of the things that you see as potential challenges to all of this legislation that's coming in? I guess that as a last-ditch effort, have you heard about this? That now, what is it? It's the city of Portland that is boycotting Texas now because of this?
Yeah, and Salesforce is saying that if anyone doesn't like the reproductive rights laws in their states, they'll relocate the employee and all of this. And my guess is Texas is laughing. The Texas governor, the Texas legislators, they are firmly in support of what they've done on Heartbeat. And my guess is they're not too sad about people from Portland not being able to go to the state of Texas. So I don't think Texas really needs Portland people moving there. And my guess is they're not too concerned about losing Salesforce employees. So, those are empty threats that I don't think persuade Texans at all. And I should say, full disclosure, I say that as a native Texan. Arizona's my home. It's been my home for most of my life, but I still am a native Texan. Texans aren't going to give a rip about what Portland is saying.
All right. Well, what have there been similar bills that have been introduced recently in Arizona?
Well, the Arizona bill that was proposed last year, this last session, for example, was very different than the Texas heartbeat law. It did not define some things that the medical emergency exception was not one that likely would have held up in court. So every other, the Arizona proposal this last session, as well as what we have seen in other states that have lost really in the first round of court because they were suing the government was tasked with enforcing them, and the courts have all ruled that they're unconstitutional. So, what the U.S. Supreme Court did on the Texas law was to say, hey, there's not a party here that's being sued. The state is not, charged with defending this law. And so it's a private citizen that would sue the abortion provider, and that was not what was going on in the case. So in some ways, it's a procedural jurisdiction type of legal issue, but they haven't been able to figure out who to sue, and to where they can get the law stopped. So the pro-abortion side will be creative. We'll see what else they come up with. But for now, it's in effect, and that's what we're going to be watching very closely to see if a similar Texas heartbeat law could work in Arizona and what that would mean for unborn babies and their mothers in Arizona.
All right. Once again, I'm being joined by Kathy Herrod of the Center for Arizona Policy. Kathy, what if there was a goal, like the number one big trophy goal that you see the pro-life movement achieving, what would that be?
Well, I think protecting life from its very beginning. Seeing Roe versus Wade, the court decision that legalized abortion, seeing that overturned, and seeing human life protected, that we return to being a country that values life at all stages, and that abortion is not the law of the land. There's another case pending before the U.S. Supreme Court called the Dobbs case. It's from Mississippi. Mississippi passed a law to limit abortions after 15 weeks gestational age of the unborn child. We're waiting to see what happens with that. The hearing hasn't been scheduled yet. But by this time next year, by June next year, we'll know if the U.S. Supreme Court is going to let states regulate abortion, how far they're going to go. So there's a lot of activity going on in the courts, a lot of activity to protect unborn children. And our goal certainly is that abortion is unthinkable, and it is not and that it's not legal. I mean, that's been the goal all along, because that is a human life that is worthy of protection.
All right. Well, let's say, for example, that the Supreme Court allows states to regulate abortion. Now, surely that wouldn't be the ultimate goal for an organization like the Center for Arizona Policy, because if, let's say, there's a woman in Arizona who is pregnant and doesn't want to be pregnant, and she can't get her abortion in Arizona because of restrictions, well, she might be able to just fly to Maine or Vermont or someplace and just get the abortion. So wouldn't giving it over to the states not be something that would coincide with your organization's ultimate goals?
Well, no, this is, since 1973, this has been an incremental effort, to use that word, as far as we get as much as we can, as soon as we can, to protect unborn children's life and their mothers. So if the Supreme Court overturns the Roe versus Wade decision and they allow states to regulate abortion to protect human life at that stage, then we're going to see more lawsuits in the states that would have a law to restrict abortion. And yes, I mean, obviously there's the problem. Women in Arizona could easily go to California. California's not going to outlaw abortion. So we're going to see we're going to see more activity both in state legislatures and in the courts. You'll see state constitutional challenges, but we're hopeful that obviously that Arizona is going to be a state that would protect unborn life, and then you continue to work toward the goal of having it be the law throughout our country.
All right. Do you believe that as more and more of these challenges come, that eventually this will get to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will just say, hey, we have this in our Constitution that you have the right to life, and that they're just going to make abortion completely illegal in all cases in all 50 states?
Well, whether that question gets to the U.S. Supreme Court and what kind of a 1-2 punch, to use that kind of a term, is uncertain. I think we'll know a lot more about this Supreme Court with what they do with the Mississippi case in Dobbs, with any other challenges that might reach them from the Texas heartbeat law. But more than likely, what's going to reach them first is going to be the Dobbs case from Mississippi, and that's what we'll know by next June. And then we'll see how far they're willing to go in that case, and then see what the next steps are and how it breaks out in the states. And of course, it's going to be in the middle of an election year, so it's going to be. We know that the battle is intense, but there's still the fundamental question is: are we going to be a nation? Are we going to be a state? Are we going to be a people that values and protects human life from its very beginning?
All right, well, let's just say a hypothetical situation, and I know that this is an argument that the pro-choicers make all the time. What are you going to do if abortion is made illegal in all 50 states? Starting from the Texas law, starting from the Mississippi situation, starting from what they're doing in Alabama. Let's say this gets up to the Supreme Court and the new Supreme Court says it's illegal everywhere. What are you going to do with all of these unwanted children that are then born to these mothers that don't want to raise these kids?
Well, I think there's no question that we have people throughout this state and throughout this country that would jump at the chance to adopt these children. And so any children that would be born to mothers who choose not to parent and who would place their children for adoption, there would be willing families that would take these children in, and it would not be a problem.
All right. Well, Kathy, is there anything else that you would like to add before we end today's interview?
No, I just would encourage listeners to consider the humanity of the preborn child, that indeed, by the time a woman knows she's pregnant, that unborn child has a beating heart, and that is a human life that from that point on, it just grows and develops as we each are doing each and every day of our lives. So that the only distinction we like to say between the unborn child and any one of us is the location. And so we want to protect these children and protect their mothers and even their fathers from the tragedy of abortion.
All right, Kathy, Herrod, thanks a lot for coming on In the Booth today. I appreciate talking to you.
Sure, thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, folks, we'll wrap up the show in just a little bit.